Hello, and welcome to the first music evaluation session. Today, we're going to look at Dr. Dre, Still Dre. Once again, my name is Tu Yang. I'm a music educator and vocal bass. And I'm doing this session mostly because, one, there's been quite a demand for it, and two, I feel like we need to bridge that gap between music that we hear in the industry and as well as music education. And so what I've come up with is the LARC system. And our goal for today is to listen, analyze, reflect, and connect to the music, using and understanding music terminology, as well as develop the fundamentals to proceed to the next level of appreciation, understanding, and musicianship. So with this session, you will need some prior knowledge. It is optional, but still helpful if you know it. So notes, rhythms and scales, instruments, some terminology, notation, as well as a DAW system. This is also in alignment with our music literacy, brought to you by the Core Art Standards from NAFME. So the standards for music literacy is that students need to have an experience in creating, in performing, and responding to music. And how much more than the music that we listen to as a society, right? The top 100. Not just classical music, but traditional music as well, or hip-hop, or even dance music. Like regardless of the music, there is a level of creativity, there is a level of performance, as well as a level of a response to the music. And that's what we're here for. So Dr. Dre recorded this in 1997 with Snoop Dogg. The genre is West Coast hip-hop, gangster rap. Length about 4.5 minutes. The label is Aftermath and Interscope, with the songwriters Andre Young, Shawn Carter, Melvin Bradford, Scott Storch, producers Dr. Dre, and Mel Mann. And of course, the iconic line in the piece is, "And I still got love for the streets." It's the D.R.E. And so for today, I'd like for us to truly focus on the music and then allow the main part of the lyrics to influence that. So a quick overview about Still Dre. It is in the key of A minor and a quarter step sharp. So the tuning is at 452.9 hertz, which is 50 cents. The tempo is at 93.5, which is an andante tempo, or a walking speed. The forces used are cello, piano, electric guitar, sine bass. It is an electric bass, but I'm using a sine bass for this one. Drums, layers for snare and bass, as well as an electric guitar with a bit crusher plugin on it. What we're going to do is we're going to first listen to this. I'm going to switch the slides over, but kind of look through, right? Dynamics, ostinato, and melody. And these are very important when setting up a beat. And I want you to listen to the dynamics and then listen for that ostinato, that continual repeated musical phrase or rhythm, and see if there's a melody. In this case, I have it written out for you already. You can pause the video and check that out. I'm going to go ahead and move the screen over to the music when you are ready. And we'll listen to about 30 seconds of this.
Still Snoop Dogg and D.R.E.
Guess who's back?
Still doing that shit, Andre?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Check me out. It's still Dre Day, AK. Though I've grown a lot, can't keep it home a lot. Cause when I frequent the spots that I'm known to rock, you hear the bass from the truck when I'm on the block. Ladies, they pay homage, but haters say Dre.
So you notice that the dynamics, besides the very, very beginning, it's pretty loud throughout, right? Even the beginning was fairly loud. And when all the instruments came in together, you had a consistent shape as well as power that's throughout. And this allows the music to really take to the front, right? To really just grab our attention and put it in the forefront. Now, the ostinato actually occurs in the right hand of the piano or the guitar. I use the fusion between the piano and guitar to get that sound. And it sets a mood, right? You have these eighth notes that are consecutive. And that phrase is repeated over and over. And the bass is pretty simple, right? 4, 1, 2, 3. 4, 1, 2, 3. And that really allows us to just be focused on the task at hand. And the task is not distracted at all. Meaning the lyrics, right, when the verse kicks in, we're not distracted by a melody or like a melodic line that's moving throughout, or a solo line of some sort. And this is pretty popular in hip hop, is to have just an ostinato, maybe like a motif that happens here and there, but never a true melody, because the idea is to allow the listener to be engaged in the text and just feel the music as like kind of like a bed or like a soundscape for us to lay in. Right, you have your A minor chord, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so that those key changes are very important. Now the progression is 1, and on beat 4, what feels like a 2, then it goes to 5 suspended, 5 minor, and then back to 1. And so we're in A minor, and we're using the natural minor scale. So there is no raised third for the 5. Right, typically, instead of a G natural, we would have a G sharp in a harmonic minor scale, but in the natural minor, it is actually just the minor 5. And so this puts us in a state of no true resolution or tension. So it's really a state of flow. Like we just kind of move between these chords, and there's some anticipation and some stress, suspension, release. But for the most part, we're maintaining that state of flow. We are in common time, 4/4. There are 4 beats in a measure, and the quarter note receives the pulse. In this case, the sub-pulse is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so that pulse really drives the energy of the piece. The tempo is slightly faster than Andante, right? It's on the quicker side of Andante, which is at 93.5 beats per minute. Now, some speculation on this on my part, in that maybe was it a sampling thing or is it an artistic thing? I'd like to say that it's an artistic thing, meaning that he deliberately chose a tempo that is not really divisible by 2 or by 60, not within that framework of a normal pulse. And so since it's slightly faster than 90, it puts us on a little bit of an edge. But it still presents a mood of walking or cruising. Once again, no melody is present, but I'd like for you to listen to the rhythmic energy that is presented. And notice how the drums are offset at the 32nd rhythmic level, 32nd note right here, which is shown right here. And I'm going to go ahead and play that for you. So let's solo our cello and piano and guitar to give us that ostinato at the very beginning. Throw in the bass. Now here's the drums. So we'll take off all the solos and we'll go ahead and solo the drum. I want you to look at this a little bit closer here. So we have this offset of energy, rhythmic energy, right, that occurs in this phrase here. So we'll loop this, and let's see what it sounds like by itself. Notice how the ghost notes, right? That extra 30-second note that comes before the downbeat, and then the offset of a 30-second rhythmic at the rhythmic level gives us that sense of anticipation before the downbeat. And so we know that there's something off. Here's what it sounds like if it were normal and without the anticipation. Right, so you have your typical your 8 8-beat, your rock beat, which is pretty simple, simple in form, it doesn't really has that effect. So here's what it sounds like for the entire piece. Notice how we're still in a state of flow, but it's no longer, there's no anticipation, right? There's no need to rush to the downbeat or to feel like the downbeat is moving somewhere. So here's what we got. That offset at the 30-second level really just pulls us in, and it's very important in this. Some beat makers, they leave it out, and I wonder if it's because the actual beat map doesn't have the 30-second slot capability, where it's usually 16th notes. So I don't know, but there are some examples that leave that out, and to me that's actually a very important element of this beat. Tension in the bass. You'll notice that there is, on beat 4, the bass moves from A to B, and this B causes tension in the chord above, and it feels like it's moving to the 2 chord, but it's actually, it changes the chord structure from just a regular A minor to an A minor / B. If we were to call this a 2 chord, it would be a B7 flat 9 sus4 no fifth, whatever you want to call it. But for me, it's simply A minor / B, meaning that the B is in the bass and then the A minor chord is still above, and that tension between on beat 4 and releases to a beat 1, the E minor the E suspension chord, it's very, very powerful. So let's take a listen to that. We'll solo the piano this time. So let's go ahead and solo this piano. And then cello as well. So we have that right there, right? What happens if the cello had no tension? So it just stayed on A. Here's what it sounds like. Right, so there's no sense of a true resolution. There's no movement. There's no tension. And the idea here is that movement from A to B creates that tension for us. When looking at this, if you were to look at this in isolation, you would think that the bass is doing something similar to what is known as an escape tone. And an escape tone is a particular type of unaccented, incomplete neighbor tone that is approached stepwise from a chord tone and resolved by a skip in the opposite direction, back to the harmony. So going from A to B, which is not in the harmony, and then skipping down to the next chord tone, the E suspended, down to E. The difference is, though, that it is not a true escape tone, meaning that it's occurring on the downbeat on a heavy beat, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. If we were to go on the and of 4, let's see what that sounds like. So if we were to take our notes here, so 4, then let's go to the and of 4. Let's go to the and of 4. There we go. See what that sounds like. So if it were to function like that, then that would be a true escape tone. But in this case, it is definitely functioning as that tension, that 2 chord that's modified with the A minor that's still hanging on until the downbeat of the next measure. And that disruption, that slight alignment difference really brings on even more tension for us. And it happens really quick, right? We don't notice it until we actually look at it horizontally as well as vertically. looking at the content, right? The most prominent word in this piece is still, and it's used throughout the entire piece. It's in the core. It's in the title, right? The music is simple and repeats with an ostinato bass line, harmony, and the chords only move between 5 and 1, with that feeling of 2 and then the suspension and the 5. And that really, really informs us, right, as we try to generate a response. In addition to that, how we feel, right? The key and tempo. The tuning is A452.9, which is 50 cents, which is exactly a quarter step sharp and slightly higher. And then the tempo is, instead of 92 or 90 or 96, it's 93.5. So these really, really oddities that we have kind of makes it stand out on its own. I don't know if it's intentional. I would assume that it's intentional, but because of these choices, this track really stands out in another element as well. You'll see some YouTubers or people on TikTok posting videos of them playing the music, and it's in A. And then if you play the original, it's in a different key, and you're like, whoa, what's going on? Well, that's because it's A452.9 as opposed to A440. And of course, the use of forces, right? And so typically when I'm checking instrumentation, I notice that Dr. Dre is using strings, right? Real drums and a piano that's slightly modified here. And to me, that gives you a sense of authenticity, right? It's not just a beat machine or an electronically generated sound. There are some real samples. There are some real instruments that are being put in here. And this idea of real and electronically modified kind of bridges that gap between old and new. And there's one really cool part here. It is the obligato. And the obligato is that part of the instrument that is integral to the piece of music and should not be omitted in performance. And let's go to where that is right here. So if I scroll down to the bottom here, let's go ahead and unsolo everything. This is the guitar at the bottom, and it sounds something like this. Right, and you'll notice that occurs throughout the piece. And it's not just a repeated phrase. There are slight variations as well. So let's take a look at them. Go down here, zoom in a little bit for you. See how that's a slight difference there? And then back to the original. Change there. Then the repeated phrase. So you have a few variations that occur throughout the piece. And here's what they sound like in context. And the reason why this is the obligato part is because if you leave it out, you don't really get a sense of when the change occurs or get a different feel for the music itself. So here it is in context. And there you have it, right? So that obligato part, it's very important, and it really brings to life that chorus or entering the chorus or changing verses. It depends on when you listen to the piece, but you can hear it in the background, and it's so subtle that it just becomes a part of the soundscape, but it's a very important part of that soundscape. So the relationship, right, from the music to the text. By creating a state of flow, the artist is able to pursue lyric and rhythmic ideas without distracting the listening space. So the lack of a melody, the music is built in such a way that supports the text. The concept of still is shown in the musical arrangement using two-measure phrases, repeated rhythmic and harmonic ideas, and the use of both natural and electronic instruments, signifying the connection between past, present, and future. Right? Still the same as he was back then, today. So when you look at it from that context, he's really bridging the gap, right? In the 90s, you have this big push for electronic instruments, for drum machines, beat machines, and here he is using elements of both sides to kind of really bridge that gap. And connecting to the audience. So we as audience members, we like to be in a state of flow when we listen to music. And this music is set up in such a way that the listener moves and flow with the music as well as the lyrics. So we're not distracted by crazy melodic lines or a singing voice that really pulls our listening environment to one area. In this case, we get to focus on the lyrics, on the voice. The easiness and predictability of the chords creates an atmosphere that keeps the lyrics in the forefront. The additional rhythmic kicks in the drums and the offset of the drums pushes the listener to keep focus and allow for extra creativity and movement as well as lyrical flow. So it's not just a basic, 8-beat boom, boom, boom. It's boom, boom, boom. The overall music and lyrics work together to bring the idea of Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg still being the prolific hip-hop artists they were back then, today, and for future generations. And we haven't even jumped into the lyrics yet. For that, you have to check out a different channel for that. As much as I love the lyrics, I'd like to focus on the music. So in this case, when we're listening, the dynamics, right? A forte dynamic, powerful from the beginning, that repeated ostinato, the bass and the harmony, the lack of a melody, and analyzing this, we are in A minor, quarter step sharp, 4/4 time, 93.5 beats per minute. Again, no melody, but with rhythmic energy, as well as the use of an obligato. Right, the content, the key choices, the use of the forces, all play into the idea of still, right? And that's how we are able to connect with that, because now we are not only in a state of flow, we also now have a set of movements, right? Whether it's bobbing our head or an actual dance or just cruising down the street or walking with some headphones on. We are now able to connect with the music at that level because it engages us at a certain pulse, at a certain rate of energy in this case. So all of this to say, the music should support the lyrics and the lyrics should be informed by the music. It's synergy, right? It's an interaction or cooperation giving rise to a whole that is greater than the simple sum of its parts. If you listen to the beat by itself, that's pretty cool. And if you read the lyrics by itself, still pretty cool. But when you put both of those elements together and allow the soundscape to just really reveal itself, it becomes music. It becomes something powerful, something engaging, something that we can connect with. So there you have it. Thank you so much for your time and for listening to this. Don't forget to check out my website at bass2yang.com. Subscribe below, YouTube. If you have any questions, comments, or if you'd like for me to focus on a different artist or even a piece, go ahead, send me a message, put it in the comments below. I'll set out a poll maybe sometime next week or maybe sometime this weekend. And so I'd like to thank you for your time, your scholarship, and for engaging with me in this little me session, this music evaluation session. Thank you and have a great day.